Look closely at Kingsport, Massachusetts. It's an archaic seaside village tucked in the Miskatonic Valley, draped in dense mist and isolated from New England. If you were to walk its steep, crooked streets, you might think you were looking at a perfectly fine wooden floorboard. But peel that wood back, and you'll find a thick layer of rot underneath. When we think of the great New England witch panics of 1692, like the one in Salem, the targets usually fit a specific profile. The accused were overwhelmingly the marginalized, the destitute and poor, and the social outcasts. But the panic that gripped Kingsport that same year deviated completely from that standard model. The citizens of Kingsport didn't turn their paranoia against the vulnerable. Instead, they weaponized it to execute their own founding fathers and the town's elite class. In a single violent stroke, the highest echelon of Kingsport society was practically wiped out. How does a relatively young colonial settlement allow a rogue, self-appointed magistrate to slaughter its own royalty? To understand the massacre of 1692, we can't look at the executions themselves. We must perform an autopsy on the demographic bedrock the town was built upon in 1639. From the moment it was founded, Kingsport was deeply fractured. Its first settlers were a motley mix of strict Puritan farmers and highly superstitious fishermen, trapped together by these rugged coastal cliffs. Those fishermen didn't come from standard English ports. They hailed from the Channel Islands, a European territory with a massive historical record of religious descent, where more accused witches were burned than anywhere else in England. They brought genuine occult traditions with them to Massachusetts, including knowledge of the infamous Bad Books of Foro Island, a collection of actual forbidden lore. For 50 years, a silent demographic Cold War simmered between the zealous Puritans who controlled the church and the Channel Islanders who worked the sea. By 1692, Kingsport was a powder keg. The town was entirely divided along ancestral lines, waiting for a match. That match was Price Byram, a self-appointed Miskatonic Valley Witchfinder who recognized this Puritan suspicion and actively decided to exploit it. Byram bypassed standard colonial law entirely. He launched a targeted, highly coordinated strike specifically against the descendants of those original Channel Islanders. He targeted the town's highest-ranking citizens, Dennis de Quitavel, Lobelia Tuttle, and Geoffrey Talbot. These victims possessed the direct bloodlines of the town's creators. Byram was legally targeting Kingsport's aristocracy. On October 30th, during a violent coastal storm, an angry mob formed. By the next morning, 13 bodies were swinging in the freezing wind. Byram successfully weaponized these foundational prejudices, convincing neighbors to carry out the state-sanctioned murder of their own leaders. The 1692 executions left the town's ruling elite decimated, and their descendants living in a state of permanent, mutual suspicion. This established a violent blueprint that would trigger again just 30 years later, during the witch trials of 1722. During that Second Inquisition, Mayor Eben Hall incited. The town's solution was to convert a condemned ship, the Gravesend, into a floating prison to house their own neighbors in the harbor. This dynamic continued through the smallpox wars of the 1770s, when citizens burned down an inoculation hospital and killed dozens of patients. These internal purges became Kingsport's permanent reaction to any crisis. Lovecraft Country is defined by this internal rot, the chilling human capacity to slaughter neighbors over the hidden secrets buried in a town's foundation.